Great. So good morning. I'm a little stuck in Budapest, but actually it's not stuck. I actually like it. So again, I know it's early, but I want to say good morning. Good morning, Yvonne. Good morning, Pat. Good morning, Dan. Good morning, Brett. What I want to say is we at ChemAxon like to think that we can provide for each individual situation, each individual platform or technical decision. And with JChem, we provided a whole number of interfaces to be able to allow you guys to do that. Again, my name is Jonathan Lee. I'm the project manager of JChem Base, our database product, and our web services product. So I'll talk a little bit about the interfaces, and maybe what's most important to you guys is the situational factors. What it is, what kind of questions that you have, what kind of doubts that you have in your mind when you're deciding, well, how can I use JChem? The SQL interface, the .NET interface, the web services interface, maybe workflow pipelining tools. We'll go over that in small details here. So on this side is all the suite of tools that ChemAxon provides in JChem. You've heard, or you will hear about Marvin today. You've seen in Ian Barry's talk starting off yesterday about all the different little pieces and tools, all these little great icons that we've got put into the applications that he's made. And I'd like to make sure that you know that, hey, you can get your application to hook in with all the things that we've made and that you've heard about today and yesterday. So, of course, Dan Durkin said yesterday that, he loves ChemAxon because it's got the Java interfaces and it just works well. So yeah, of course, we work well with plain old Java objects. We work well with server-side JSPs. And what I like to remind you is that, yes, you can do that, but you can also do all these other things. Use SQL with our Cartridge product. Work with the .NET framework. All of the things that you can do in the Java, just about everything you can do in the .NET world, and that's what really makes you leverage use as leverage your platforms that you have at your own businesses. And of course, web services, something near and dear to my heart, but that allows us to say, hey, you can use JChem, but be independent of your platform, be independent of your programming language, and work with a lot of the infrastructure that you've built in your own companies. So what are some of the situational factors that you've got? In fact, actually, this slide really talks about, maybe all of you here, you've heard about a lot of things that you want to try out. You've heard about things that you think, that's actually going to have a good fit. But maybe you've got other folks at your workplace that you have to convince, or you have to quell the doubts that they have. And we're gonna see. Well, they have a lot of questions, and you're gonna have answers for them as well. What if we don't use Java? Well, you ask, well, what actual language do you prefer? We've got the .NET. We've got other web languages that are just the forefront for Web 2.0 stuff, Web 3.0 stuff. If it's going to use SOAP, or if it's going to use any kind of, or it's going to have any kind of web-friendly libraries, then yes, of course, you're going to be able to use JChem. Does your environment have just Oracle? We've handled it, Cartridge. If it doesn't, that's fine too. We've got all sorts of connections with a JChem suite of tools. So that shouldn't be a question of, we don't have Oracle, so we can't use this or that. All the stuff that's provided in the cartridge, for example, you can also do inside of JChem. The end user environment, if the guy says, oh, we need a desktop application, we have products that do that, IJC. If you want the web client, we also have products that do that. We'll talk about some of the things in the future about how you can do that to the best of your situation. And of course, some of our folks out there have a service-oriented architecture. Well, that's actually perfect for the web services. That's perfect for building up and reusing all of those components in web services. So JChem Cartridge, that's a product that is entirely tied with the Oracle database. Of course, that's one of the most used databases of our customers. But we've leveraged that system, being able to use the security and the reliability, scalability of Oracle. But we also provide stored procedures to handle the database work and JChem server to handle things that are outside of that realm, something that is done better outside of outside of the Oracle database. So we separate that the work to the best actors, to the best machines. So we're supporting SQL in that sense as a programming language. Again, we're talking about interfaces outside of Java. If you prefer to use the SQL language, this is something you can use. And we support most of the JChem modules in this JChem Cartridge product. The .NET, we've made great leaps and bounds over the past year or two to support the .NET framework. We're using an IKVM technology, but basically we're transforming directly from the Java into the .NET formats. So it's a lot faster and much more compatible. The Marvin apps are in there, Marvin View, Marvin Sketch, and as you can see in the graphic there, we're using that code to develop for JChem for Excel, JChem for SharePoint, and so we know it works, and you guys can use it as well. Here, the .NET stuff, of course, supports .NET languages, and all of the JChem Suite except for Cartridge, which we talked about earlier, and the Marvin Beans. JChem Web Services is what I like to think has interoperability as its main point. We want to make sure that we use all the standards in the industry, like WSI, SOAP, WSDL, and allow everybody to use this outside of Java world, but inside of the web world. So anybody that's using web clients and that want to use these web-friendly languages can do that. AJAX, JavaScript, Perl, Python scripting languages, Ruby, PHP. We have Adobe Flex folks. A lot of choices here, and you just want to utilize what your company has strengths in. Of course, you can still use the app languages with web services like Java and C#. And we have a growing list of modules. Every time we make a new module, we're going to try and put that into web services. Other thing about web services is that it's automated client generation. So you're doing, they like to say, the heavy lifting. You're not doing it, we're doing it, or the SOAP languages or libraries that come with all of these languages you can use that, and you don't have to worry about any of the interoperability issues. I talked a little bit about SOAP, and that's what's unlocking all of this, all of these interoperability locks or problems. Here you can see with this amount of code in Python, with this amount of code in JavaScript, gets translated into something like this. It's called SOAP. It's basically the lingua franca of web services. And boom, you get to use JChem Web Services. And of course, all of the rich chemical intelligence inside of the JChem Suite. So this is really unlocking all of that intelligence for you. Just a quick mention about the architecture, because I want to make sure that it's clear that you can use web services on any platform with any language. We're using open source components, something called Axis 2 and Tomcat. You may have heard that in the tech circles. And here in this red, what that allows you to do is that, hey, we can use it on any OS, any platform, anything that runs Java. And it's open source, so you get that support of that community and that price tag. A list of all the features here. I talked about features in Cartridge and the .NET, but here again we have a growing list of these services. And now, since I've been doing this a little while, this list is actually too long for my slide here. And these future services are coming very, very soon in 5.4. The ones that we've always had, database-related services, JChem searching, data manipulation, all these DML, DDL type of functionality, loading, unloading tables, importing, exporting, that sort of thing. Molecular conversion services, standardization. These are great for registration services or applications. Chemical terms, something that is great for virtual screening. And reactor services, creating things that are chemically feasible. And a whole bunch of things that I'm excited about at the coming in a month or two. Molecular search, Marcouche is something that we've got coming up in 5.4. JChem table management, a couple of other things that you can see up there. And those are coming a little bit later. I'll show you a quick demo. And the point of the demo is just, well, for me to show off a little bit what we've done, but to show you, yes, this is all made in a non-Java environment. It uses the web services. It's got a whole number. Uh-oh. I might have to go and click on the user. If anyone wants to know my room number, there it is. Right, but the point of the demo is to show, hey, we can create full feature applications and still get all of the features that JChem provides, but we do it outside of Java. We do it. We may skip it, that's okay. We've got I'll get a local copy and we'll see if we can run it there. But right, so my point is that you've got a lot of options and you've got a lot of chemical intelligence that you get to rip out of JChem and put it anywhere you want. Use that Marvin, use the Marcouche stuff that you've heard about. Well, the other thing I wanted to show you was this. It was that easy. I basically downloaded the, what is it, the 5.3.8, the latest release, and on one configuration page, I just changed, or I pointed to the database that I wanted to point to, and then I just double-clicked on startup.bat. So very easy, and this is an application, a demo, but actually pretty full-featured application that comes free with the with Web Services server, and you can go ahead and use it. I don't know what's in large, but maybe it's a lot of molecules. Okay, so there's 250,000 structures in this large database. And if you can see, when we flip down, browsing is very, very fast. The great thing about this application here is that we're using AJAX, and we're using any of the libraries that the AJAX world, all of that community provides you, and we're using jQuery windowing system. So again, you get to use whatever your developers like to use for this. Okay, I won't show too much of this now. I think the point is made. The last thing I want to say is workflow integrations. For the computational chemists, for the folks that like the workflow tools to build your own workflows and send it off to your own colleagues, we support all of these major workflow integration tools, Pipeline, Pilot. We provide those directly, the modules here. Actually, this one. And KNIME, provided by Infocom, and InfoSense, which is done by IDBS. A lot of information on the websites for you. That's actually a great source of information. We have stuff about Cartridge, we have stuff about .NET, and we have stuff about web services. And these forums are really important for the developers to have instant communication with us. Okay, well, thank you very much. That was my talk. Hopefully you've seen that yes, you can make these things out of Java. We're not just a Java shop, and that we can get your application to use ours.
Great, thank you. We have time for 1 or 2 questions. If anybody has some questions for Jonathan.
I'm very curious about the web services as well as the nodes and components for the workflow tools. Mm-hmm. Going forward, as you release new either pieces of your infrastructure as web services, do you intend to deploy parallel nodes to Pipeline, Pilot, to KNIME, or do you recommend that going forward, we just use the native capabilities of those tools and connect to the web services directly?
I see. Trying to connect to the web services through like Pipeline Pilot nodes or through KNIME nodes.
Correct, because if you deliver a node, you put sort of your framework around it, what we intend to use and what may be black box, whereas if we go to the web service, we have more control. I don't mind doing it one way or the other, but it is kind of parallel tracks, so I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess it's whatever suits your own needs. If you've got if you're comfortable using the web services, I'd say that's fine. That's another option for you to work in that workflow pipelining environment. So, I mean, it's really up to you to decide. I think it works well, but of course, if it's native inside of the Pipeline Pilot nodes and it works for you, then you can avoid getting another call out to the web services.
Some of it may be timing as well. If you release a new web service, you may not have those nodes available at the same time.
That's true. That's true. And actually, he raises a good point that we always like to take the requests of our users. Say, hey, we want this in the pipeline node, or we want this in the web services, and we're going to take that and use that as to help prioritize the work that we do. Thank you.